The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 71. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria. Today, absolutely delighted to be joined by Thom Shea, who's a retired, highly decorated Navy SEAL, senior chief, author of Unbreakable and Navy SEAL's Way of Life, which originally was intended to be a collection of lessons to his children in the event he did not survive combat in Afghanistan. He's the founder of Adamantine Alliance, where he is a leadership instructor, speaker, executive coach, and along with a small team of his SEAL brothers, he provides corporate consulting for companies across America and in several other continents. Thom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure. So there's this, in corporate America, obviously, there's need for sort of leadership and things like that. A lot of times it feels like corporate America is moving into what I would think would be a little less aligned with a more kind of disciplined military approach, but you seem to be approaching it from the standpoint of going in that direction. Are you feeling like that's still, like there's still a desire, a need for this kind of more sort of ready, disciplined approach in leadership?
I think it's a misconception of what maybe the SEALs were or what we provide.
Okay.
The SEALs are not disciplined. Please do not ever use that word in the sentence with a SEAL.
Really? Okay. That's good.
So I don't think corporate America or any organization is going off the rail or going left or right, off center. What we look at is we only look at the human factor. Okay. And that's really what SEALs do is what makes you good in combat is not your weapon. It's not your training is about you training to be better as a human being.
Yeah.
As a better warrior, better operator, better teammate, better leader, whatever the paradigm that you're in. What we look at is the human factor. And all organizations are really missing the mark on what we call it the human factor. The current trend is to call it a culture. So the culture in the business world is gray at best.
Yeah.
So it has nothing to do with discipline. Discipline is the easy factor.
Got it. So the elements of, because I know you're talking about sort of the human factor, but as this shows up in corporate team dynamic and things like that, what are the missing elements, do you think, that you're installing here that are really important?
Well, I think there are only basics to anything, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
And what we found as SEALs is that the basics make up everything. You just got to learn a lot of basics. And in the corporate world, what I found in my first kind of rendition of training executives only was that the basics, and I'll explain it, but the basics were missing. And so then we designed a curriculum around hammering the basic skill sets of the human dynamic, how you actually get better at you.
Got it.
And when you discover that, it makes things very simple. So one of the things that what we find early on is a simple factor that we didn't anticipate, or I didn't anticipate either. And that basic factor is that people don't do something simple. I hate to say it on live or any broadcast.
No, yeah.
People don't honor their word. From the leadership level down to, not down to, but across the spectrum, the elemental factor of if you can't do what you say you're going to do, you're of no value to an organization. And what we found is organizations don't even think about that as a powerful means in which to operate.
Yeah.
So, like I have roles and responsibilities, and everybody signs a document organizationally that this is my role, and I'm responsible to do an A, B, and C, and I'm compensated, however I'm compensated. And then they don't go do it.
Mm.
And that's not what they do in the organization. Is they're hired to do something,
Right.
and then they don't do it.
Is,
So
is
what we
that just
found early on is to address that as a very hot topic,
yeah.
thinking that it wouldn't, hey, you guys got to do what you say you're going to do. In the SEAL
Right.
community, if you don't stay.
Sure.
So we weeded out everybody that can't do that. So
Right.
I wasn't quite sure that was what the missing link was. But every organization has that as a big factor.
Yeah.
So that'd be the first thing that we look at.
I think that a lot of people would agree with you. I think that would resonate with a lot of people who are kind of familiar with the corporate culture. I wonder what you think the underlying problem there is, because it seems like it could be complex. Is it an accountability? I mean, I guess it's really easy for us to kind of go, oh, well, we just got a bunch of people who just don't want to do their jobs, right? But is it a more complex dynamic? Like, is it an accountability thing? Is it a systems incentive thing, or is it really just a gut, you just not showing up for what you said you were going to do deep down?
It's not complex. It's a very
I guess
basic
I suppose
element.
you would have said that, given that who we're talking
Well,
about.
no, it seems complex. Accountability is a complex conversation.
Yeah.
Because accountability is an adjective describing a series of events that either happened or didn't happen.
Yeah.
But then you have to go back to the original event. And so it's a third order of effect. So accountability is a conversation that's great on a PowerPoint. But if you say, hey, we got to hold everybody accountable, you still don't know how to do it.
Right.
So what you have to, and it's not being taught anymore. It's not effectively being taught organizationally. Probably stems from, schools not actually teaching it, parents, whatever the dynamic is.
Yeah.
But we saw that in the SEAL community is simple things, and the one admiral that was on a podcast didn't make your bed. It's that simple.
Yeah.
By the way, you're supposed to make your bed, make it. And so not very complex.
Right.
It's actually very hard to install in an organization though.
Sure. Well, you got a lot of moving parts, it feels like.
Yep.
Right. So are there two sides to this? In other words, it feels like you're addressing the kind of core motivational piece, which is, there needs to be an internal commitment to this, but it feels like organizations also can be guilty of letting this slide if they don't actually have the follow-up conversation and there's consequences associated with not doing your word. Like, a lot of people might kind of, wink their eye at it or think, whatever, I guess someone else will fill in. It seems like there's got to be an organizational level of this as well, right?
Well, consider that being, say, the baseline foundation of being successful organizationally, whether you're a leader or whether you're looking at the whole company. If success is predicated on people doing simple things like honoring your word,
yeah,
the next thing that you build on that is all tasks. So what are people supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And that is where it becomes complex, is we make our day-to-day tasks so complex, nobody can carry them out and they're never going to be effective.
Sure.
And what we do in our training methodology is break everything down into threes. So commit to only doing 3 simple things a day. And everybody's like, well, I have 1 million things to do. By the way, it doesn't matter. You're never going to get to 1 million.
Right.
And we learn that element in combat. So
Sure.
Combat is very complex. There's 1,000 bullets flying at you. You can't look at all of them, but you can look at one. Or you got 20 enemies running at you. I can't deal with 20. I can deal with one.
Right.
So we teach that same methodology corporately is, foundationally honor your word and then break things down into very simple things that you can do when you're tired or whatever. And when we do that, what we see is we call it the ROI. The return on that training or investment is about in 3 months, they hit their yearly goal.
Yeah.
By doing simple things. Across any organization that we've seen, from insurance companies to lumber mills to anything is break things down to simple and hammer the simple. You don't have to get to the complex if you hammer the simple.
I mean, that seems to be a recurring theme. I think that you're right. We do make things way more complicated than they need to be. And I think, especially in corporate, there's this concept of, I got to add value, which is going to add another layer of complexity.
Complexity.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So just really quickly, want to kind of pivot a little bit. How did you make the shift into corporate leadership training? What was that journey like from SEAL to
I try to make it a 2-minute conversation. I don't know that I can. So when I retired maybe 6 years ago, I'd been in for 23 years. And during retirement, or right before I retired, I had a manuscript written for my kids. And my wife, Stacy, said, "Hey, let's get it published." Yeah. That ain't easy. And I had no intent to get it published. So we got 10 books printed out in a first edition fashion, gave it to our family. Stacy puts it up on Amazon and it goes viral.
Nice.
So out of it going viral, I had to decide, do I want to have a job, the 3-letter word that, instead of the 4-letter word,
right?
Or do I want to figure out this nebulous space of where the book is going to take us? So I decided to do the hard thing, is to figure out the entrepreneurial side. And as the book got out, CEOs of companies engaged with me directly saying, "Hey, I want you to teach me what you're trying to say in the book." So I designed a curriculum around teaching executives through a long, extended, year-long process in 5 areas. And that's their physical health, their ability to learn, their ability to make money, their ability to have good quality relationships at home, and their spiritual ability, if you will.
Yeah.
And it took a long time. And then they said, "Hey, can you come and work for me?" And I'm like, I'm not going to do that, but I'll help you grow your company.
Yeah.
So we designed a methodology around approaching companies by working with the executive first, because if the leader doesn't get it, you're wasting money and time.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right on that.
And so, and I can't say the transition was easier. I think the transition was harder than actually being in combat. I knew what the fuck I was doing there. I didn't know what I was doing here.
Yeah.
Other than human factor, I really enjoy seeing people get their stuff in order and make their life work and whatever they're going to do. And we've created a method to actually move the human needle, if you will.
That's great. Yeah, and so I mean, it's the great storyline of having that book lead out to opportunities. I mean, I think many people see that as a potential for themselves to be able to put something out there and then have it be the core focus or the center point of some kind of curriculum. So it's great. It's a great story. You're able to make that work. I know it's never like a straight line,
I was going to say, just because you see people doing it, I had mentors that were helping me. It wasn't me trying to do it solo.
Yeah.
And, it ain't easy. And I'd come from a world that wasn't easy. So the transition was just me taking everything that I'd learned from mindset to skill set into the nebulous corporate space or the business world, and hammer and be relentless and pull people along with me that were also relentless. If you think you're going to write a book and then make $1 million, you better have the ability to recover from failure, because that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Until at some point in time it works out.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice for anyone who's authored a book. It's not always an easy thing. It always looks like it's a quick and easy path from the hindsight, but no one ever sees the twists and turns of the path.
Oh, it's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. I got to say, just to pause for a minute and say, for me, my big takeaway is I'm going to feel way better about myself that you said combat isn't as bad as the entrepreneurial journey. That makes
entrepreneurship is ruthless. It's actually people not trying to kill you, though. That's the only difference.
I guess that's true.
People are actually trying to help you in the entrepreneurial world. I think the world more embraces people that are trying to take risk.
Yeah.
And, but nothing seems to work out the first 152 times that you try it.
That's
and
true.
if you're going to try, if your listeners are trying to think about entrepreneurial or growing a business, you have to be able to fail and recover.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yep. That's a really good insight. And I do think that the difference between successful entrepreneurs and unsuccessful ones are the ones who are emotionally resiliently able to recover from failure. Yeah, I do think that is a key. I want to pivot really quickly to the process that you take companies through. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So it sounds, you've already started this discussion a little bit, because it sounds like you start with the executive and kind of move down from there, which I think is a brilliant move. I think a lot of people try to manage up through the corporate consulting.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't
it's
work.
Managing through a minefield if you start at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. So as you were working, can you walk us through kind of your process? Because you obviously outlined different sort of areas that you're working in, but how do you actually work logistically with the company to help them create their strategy and execute?
Yeah, hopefully somebody listening or watching will get some kind of benefit from this. And we use what was now in year 5, we have an acronym. So we look at leadership first, and there are obviously truncations of leadership. Then we look at how the organization or the leadership targets their environment. So the acronym is leadership targeting. And then we look at how that organization actually goes out and recruits either people to come into the organization or recruits client. And there's a method to those 3 first elements.
Okay.
The fourth element is how they actually train their organization. So lead, target, recruit, train. And then at the end, we look at retention. So retention of personnel, retention of clients, and obviously money. It's a great way to measure retention. So when we culminate that whole lead, target, recruit, train, and retain, those are the 5 points that we look at organizationally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And about how long are you typically engaging with the company on this journey?
Yeah, we tailor it to the demand of the company.
Okay.
Not all companies don't want to produce, position to sell. Some just want to grow and retain the organization.
Sure.
I would say 50% of the time, it's about a year-long process. And what we look at is we're going to produce 2.5x in 9 months.
Okay.
So wherever we start in those 5 areas measured, and we produce measurable ways to analyze that those 5 areas are 2.5 times better than when we started.
That's great. And I think this is a good conversation for anyone who's doing any kind of corporate consultative work where there's longer term engagements. Are you finding that it's easier for you to kind of get in with a smaller engagement and build from there? Or when you first go in, have you already agreed on sort of a longer term set of targets? What works better for you?
We're so adaptable. I don't think we look at just the long-term retainer initiative because sometimes it's not what's needed.
Okay.
What we find is a 3-month initial setup to engage with us and with them and have an endpoint to it. So, either we've achieved the results in 3 months that we initially decided on, and we want to extend that to achieve more, or we complete it. For some reason, most companies want to extend out to a year.
Sure. Now, I mean, that framework of, establishing a win in a 12-week time frame and then expanding it out is a really classic best practice for corporate consulting contracts. It's almost a little magic. I think people really want to see some kind of milestone hit or a win, at that 90-day mark. it's a human nature thing. I see it
Yeah,
across
boy,
all
you know,
industries.
if you hire somebody to teach you to lose weight and in 12 weeks you've gained 50 pounds, you might want to rethink of it.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
you know, during that disruption period of the first period of time, from our vantage point, we're always, oh my God, it's going to not turn.
Yeah.
Because when you disrupt an organization or a leadership team, it always has down, river effects on finances.
Sure.
But boy, when it actually you solve the leadership problem, there's actually a quicker return.
Yeah, I do think that's an undervalued concept. I think a lot of people, a lot of corporate folks, when they see financial results not quite the way they want, it's very easy to go knock on sales and marketing's door and think it's really all a top line problem. But it is amazing that turning the knob of leadership can have those financial results, and it's not always the first knob people go to. I do think it's undervalued.
Right.
Yeah. Last question for you. The corporations who need this kind of work, how would they recognize what are the sort of symptoms of illness they would recognize in their organization where they think, oh man, we got to jump on this? What are they observing?
They're stuck.
Okay.
So usually what we take on are corporations or small groups or small teams or even individuals that have already achieved success but are now stuck. They're on a plateau.
Okay.
They invest a shit ton of money and doesn't work. They try this, they try that, and they're stuck.
Yeah.
And so I would say 90% are the stuck, people or companies. Yeah. The other 10%, it's a big risk to us, not financially, but it's a big risk to take on a bleeding asset. Sure. That everything is going bad.
Right. Because
that's such a disruptive event in their life and in our life to break it again. When things are a problem, is because there's a problem.
Right.
And 10% of the efforts that we go on are what we call bleeding assets, where everything's going wrong. Everybody knows they're going wrong. Yeah. And nobody knows how to solve it. We go into that, and it's very disruptive.
Sure. Yeah.
Same method.
At that point, yeah, and anything's going to be painful. Any change is going to be painful, but necessary. I mean, what else do you do? Either you lose the company or you make the changes, I suppose.
Most people ride the company all the way into the ground.
Yeah, I have seen that. That's true. You'd think, Yeah. But anyway, well, hey, Thom, we'd love to continue talking about this, but we've run out of time. I know you're super busy and really appreciate that you taking your time for the interview. Before we go, though, for folks who are interested in connecting with you, learning more about what you do, what's a great place for them to go to connect with you?
I would say 3 places at thomshea.com, THOMSHEA, and that's the website. You can get a brief of what we do. Okay. And then on Thom Shea on Facebook, or reach out to me directly in an email, engage, ENGAGE at Adamantine Alliance. And hopefully you put that in the notes, because I can't even spell the dang name myself.
No, we've got the link below the video and on the show notes page. So if you're out and about listening to this, come on back to the show notes page and you can click on through to connect with Thom. Thom, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for being with us on this episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria. And if you are doing any kind of corporate consulting work, there are really good lessons here from Thom about how to structure that and how to engage. So take that, apply it, and hopefully that helps you push through. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.